Welcome to tonight's event. It's called Making Connections and Building Movements. And this is an outreach and planning event for the 2015 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference. Panelists have been asked to discuss their own movements, how it relates to nuclear abolition, our five focus areas or demands, and how we can build our movements together for long-term organizing. First, we have Jim Anderson, who is president of Peace Action New York State. He is a combat veteran. He is a radio program host in Buffalo and a lifelong movement activist for peace and justice. Next up, we have Sumumba Sobukwe, founder and co-creator of Occu-Evolve, Occupy Wall Street, which is currently among the longest running and last active groups within the Occupy Wall Street movement, and is chair of the Occupy for Justice Because Black Lives Matter Committee. And then finally, we have longtime activists around the issues of war and peace, social justice we have Martha Cameron, who's a longtime activist around the issues of war and peace, social justice, and the environment. She is currently co-chair of the Climate Action Committee of Brooklyn for Peace.
And good evening, everyone. It's always good to be back home in New York, in the city of New York. I'm born and raised in Buffalo, lived here about 23 years organizing. Among the many things I'm a founding, organizing member of the Black United Front along with Reverend Herbert Daughtry. And I am a combat Vietnam veteran. About 2 weeks after Dr. King was killed, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. It's a long story, but I'm not going there. But I say that to say because it's relevant in my life. And things in our lives are relevant and important. And my charge here tonight is to make the connection of peace around the issue of the nuclear non-proliferation work that we're doing, and with all the other areas that many of us work in. I got my different badges on, as you can see, because peace demands action. This little one here is from 2010, from the NPT talks, when we organized and what we did. This one, of course, many of you know from the Peace Climate March. And I don't wear them just for decorations. I wear them because not only did I earn them, I didn't go buy a badge. I was engaged in doing the work. And so I want to wear the badge, and I wear it proudly, and I urge others to do the same. Peace. Peace has been spoken of in many ways, and in fact, it is easy to talk of and wish for. Peace, the desired essence in varying issues of life, and certainly in the affairs of government at every level, local, national, international. We have grown accustomed to hearing peace expressed often, talked about often. But as Eleanor Roosevelt once said, it isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Peace. Everybody wants peace. Poets talk about it. People sing about it. Let there be peace on earth. Even many of us in this room come from a time when they say, peace, man. We got ornaments. We got peace all around, signs, all kinds of things. And that's good, it's not bad, but it's not enough. Peace at home and peace abroad. Now, what does all of this mean? Well, we already know. We're here tonight as we try and make the connections on the work that we're doing. This is a convergence moment. But I want to flip the script, because a lot of times when we come together, we still forget we're carrying some of the old things we had that we done carry with us through every movement. Because all of us in this room have been places, have sat places, participated in things, and that's kind of what we did, and we did it good, but it wasn't enough because we didn't have a team effort. Let me tell you right now, in places like Florida, you got baseball teams going down, working out, getting ready for their seasons. You got football teams at the Columbine looking to see who's going to be on their team, what role will they play. The point about it that I want you to notice is that they bring in stars from all over the country, all over the world indeed. And what they do first of all is they go into training camps to learn how to play together. And I would submit to you that in our movement, we haven't done enough of that. I would submit to you that while we all know that peace is necessary, you can't talk about troubled waters, contaminated land, food that has been messed with, and not recognize that there's no peace in that. You can't only see peace as being related to war. We have a lot of writers that talk about that, but you know, Dr. King says, peace is not merely the absence of tension. We hear it. We hear it all the time. Some of us say it and we write it, but what does it really mean? With all of us in this room, with what we know and what we're participating in, why isn't our movement further, stronger, and more radiant? Some of us are not at the entrance door of life. Some of us are closer to the exit. No need to rush. But the truth is, what has changed? Has the needle moved? Well, peace is attainable, and we can do better together. And it starts with us. Do not sit in this room and think that the issue of nuclear proliferation does not connect to any area of issues around that we all work in, the different areas that we work in. I just said, you cannot talk about campaign finance reform of the politicians who take money not to do that of the constituents, but those with the big pocket and desires of greed, and not think it's not connected to non-nuclear proliferation work that we do. These politicians are international now. We just saw it kind of play out in front of Congress already, where they will come from abroad to come and try and get their way. They come, they talk peace, but they certainly don't come in a peaceful way, and the language that they use is not peaceful. The behavior is not peaceful. The customs that we have with peace is because we do want it. But you know what happens to us? Is that we are in a world where the absence of peace has been affected by the reality that we have some issues in the world that we're not immune to. Racism and white privilege. I can say that, and I can say it strongly. If you look at Vincent and Tanvi's new book, African Americans Against the Bomb, what you will see is that we've always been there. But in his book, he says, you know why we don't see a lot of them in the room today? Is because not only did historians look away from that community, but some of us have. Not because we wanted to, we just didn't know how. And I guarantee you, in most of our organizations, we're talking about how to get more people of color. We don't have peace yet because we don't have our team together yet, and we haven't learned how to play better together yet. But we're on our way. We know the issues that we have to stand before, and it's in moments like this that become the training camp to help us snap out of it. We should never come to another meeting like this wondering if we connect. We should come making the meat at the connection. If you're about air, if you're about clean water, if you're about clean air, then you should have no doubt that in knowing that any kind of plutonium exploding anywhere is going to mess with your air and your water and the land. If you care about education and the social issue, you should have no problem joining to know that if we keep spending more money, and I mean more money, on building weapons, nuclear weapons, replacing the weapons we have, and know that they're not a deterrent. They don't deter accidents. We got enough accidents. We don't need a whole lot of them to know that the accidents that are occurring will harm us even more than what they're doing in countries around the world now. I got a half a minute left. And you know, I'm of the Baptist tradition. And it takes a little time to get wound up because, you know, stopping people, getting you into the mode to know that we talking for real. This is, right now, nobody should have to qualify the connections of these issues. You should be almost pointing out, hey, my issue is connected to that. Who do I need to do? Well, call 10 people that you know who are in the organization who are on that issue and tell them they need to be involved with this movement. Because if we don't do it, it won't get done. Don't mistake the rallies and the marches we do as just something we do. We're not doing parades. We're doing action that is meant to have an impact. It is a transitional moment. We are the transitional people who have to keep rising, ever rising, and changing ourselves to do what is needed at the juncture of time we find ourselves in. Right now, yes, we got to talk to the world leaders. That's why we have to be at the UN in April. And at the same time, we have to understand that our issue, whatever it is connected to this. We do better together. And the only way the world is going to get better if we together work at this.
So my name is Sumumba Sobukwe. I became a member of Occupy Wall Street at the end of October. I wasn't there in the very beginning, but I knew when the 700 arrests happened that movement would get big. And I came in at the time, I was a person that was in a homeless shelter at the time, and so I really wasn't interested in living in a tent to downgrade any further. People never understood that part of it. All of these issues that are very, very, very much tied together. And I think someone alluded to how do we connect, I heard the conversation, how do we connect war and peace and nuclear disarmament to the issue of wages, to the issues of Black Lives Matter. Oh, let me also say that we've been doing Black Lives Matter stuff for a long time, even before there was a hashtag. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives, somebody said, well, Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with the environment. And it's like, when you tell that to an African person who lives in the South Bronx, or lives in Harlem near the sewage plant, like it's all connected. It ties to a Black person or a person of color that's working at McDonald's where they're not getting wages. And the thing about the struggles, and be it gentrification, all of these struggles are not allowing us to breathe. We don't even have to wait for a nuclear bomb to come over or a nuclear reactor to melt down or any point to just go crazy. We can't breathe right now. And a lot of us, even in this room, sooner or later, we don't put up a fight. We're not going to be able to live in this city, be able to afford to live in this city. So all of these issues basically bring us back to not being able to breathe. And we have several actions coming up. And I just want to say in closing, it's just interesting. I hope that we can bring something together. I'm coming from Union Square, and there's 3 different demonstrations going on, all disjointed. When I first crossed, no offense to somebody, some organizers may be here, but the first demonstration I saw was, it was a demonstration against the occupation in Palestine. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, maybe this is the main demonstration. And then I look across the street, and then there's a demonstration against the verdicts or the killings of Black people in Atlanta and in Wisconsin, the most recent killings. There's that demonstration going on across the street. And then there's something for Tibet. There's a couple steps up. This is all in Union Square. 3 different disjointed actions. And we have this problem, but we definitely have to work on that and definitely try to work together. Just like last year was a monstrosity. How can you have a union march and a march coming from the immigrant and workers, and that march does not connect? One ends at Foley, the other ends at Wall Street. All because somebody said they didn't get an invitation or an email. So hopefully in this group, we can get this thing together because we can't breathe and we need to breathe, be able to breathe and be able to live.
I've been asked to speak about nuclear power and its relation to nuclear weapons and climate change. And I just wanted to say at the Climate Convergence last September, there was a 3-hour workshop on this topic, and I'm supposed to cover this in 10 minutes. So this is going to be the Cliff Notes version. and you can pick up some more material at the back of the room before you leave. Nuclear power is touted as the answer to our climate change prayers. It's clean, green energy, it's zero carbon emissions, it's probably even gluten-free. So we should all go out and build more nuclear power plants. But like clean coal and biodiesel and clean green natural gas, this is a fantasy. Actually, more accurately, it's a lie. Nuclear energy is not clean. Uranium mining poisons the land and the people who live on it, in this country, mostly Native Americans. Radioactive leaks are routine from our nuclear power plants, and every increase in the age and number of reactors in the planet increases the probability of a Fukushima. Nuclear reactors are hugely expensive. They take many years to build. And if we're going to have any impact at all on reducing emissions, we would have to build between 1,500 and 2,000 new reactors to even make a dent in global emissions. That would be one new reactor every 2 weeks for the next 60 years. And that's assuming no increase in global emissions. So think about that, 60 years. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we have 15 years in order to prevent irreversible climate change. Irreversible means you can't go back. So nuclear power is definitely not the answer. To me, the most terrifying thing about nuclear power is the waste. Nuclear reactors generate millions of pounds of spent fuel every year, 77,000 tons in the United States alone. And we have absolutely no idea what to do with the waste. We have no way to store it safely. Think about the changes that are occurring right now at the beginning stage of climate change. We have more hurricanes, we have greater storm surge, Hurricane Sandy, we have rising sea levels. Most nuclear power plants in the world are built near large bodies of water. We have about 20 nuclear reactors along the Atlantic coast alone. The Turkey Point reactor, which is just outside of Miami, was almost flooded during Hurricane Andrew in 1993, and things have only gotten worse since then. The whole of southern Florida will probably be underwater in a couple of decades. So imagine what happens when a nuclear power plant drowns. The waste from our nuclear plants will be radioactive for at least 100,000 years. We've only been on this planet for 200,000 years. We've only had written words for 10,000 years. So what happens if our civilization crashes and burns and leaves us with only small bands of humans to start again? We could very well lose our knowledge of written language again. And how do we then identify with some kind of universal sign the deadly piles of spent fuel that we're leaving all over the planet? Coal, oil, gas, and uranium all occur together naturally. Nuclear energy and fossil fuels both originate as products of nature that we dig out of the bowels of the earth. Carbon emissions are embodied in nuclear power, in the concrete that's used in the construction, in the energy that is used to mine the uranium and store the waste and so forth. And radioactive elements are locked into fossil fuels. Coal ash, for example, contains a heady mixture of uranium, thorium, and heavy metals, which is now being, quote, recycled into concrete and sheetrock. 45% of our sheetrock now contains coal ash. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive material that's called a norm, and it exists in all shale plays. It is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. The Marcellus Shale, which is the main gas play in our region, has extremely high levels of radon. It's one of the highest in the country. When you frack, you liberate the radon from the earth, and the radon combines with the gas, and it combines with the frack wastewater. And now what's happening to that radon wastewater? It's now being used as a de-icer on New York highways. New York has banned high-volume hydrofracking, which is not all kinds of fracking, it's just one kind. But it continues to accept large volumes of frack waste from Pennsylvania. So a lot of that radon is now starting to turn up in our landfills. And as more and more of the gas that we get comes from the Marcellus Shale, we can expect to be breathing radon when we boil water for tea or make the family dinner. So if fossil fuels are nuclear power's kissing cousins, then nuclear weapons are its evil twin. France, China, Israel, and India all used peaceful research reactors to develop nuclear weapons. Israel, which is practically frothing at the mouth to try and get us involved in a war against Iran, which is just complete insanity, it resists all attempts to monitor its own weapons program. And the United States is trying to sell India more nuclear power plants, even though India is unwilling to submit to safeguards against weaponization. Neither India nor Israel has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they, like every other nuclear power, are in the process of upgrading their nuclear arsenals. Obama has announced that he's going to spend $1 trillion over the next 30 years to upgrade our nuclear arsenal. According to Friends of the Earth of Australia, nuclear power plants produce enough plutonium to make 7,000 weapons each year. Indian Point now has enough nuclear material for almost 1,500 Nagasaki-sized bombs. As climate change worsens and as the struggle for food and water and arable land intensifies, we can expect social breakdown on a global scale. If this happens, more and more of that waste plutonium may find its way into the shadowy hands of non-state groups. So all in all, I've painted a very dark scenario, and now I've been tasked with the other side of my talk, which is to say, this is how we're going to change the world. I call this the vision thing. First, we have to ban nuclear weapons and nuclear reactors, all of them. We have to shut them down, seal them up, mark them with a skull and crossbones. And we have to convert to renewable energy, not just because of the imminent threat of irreversible climate change, but because the petroeconomy is a cudgel in the global resource wars and the drive for hegemony. Countries that can free themselves of dependence on fossil fuels, either for domestic use or for export, also liberate themselves from the constant threat posed by the on-again, off-again oil spigot. Renewable energy in that circumstance becomes our cudgel against the war machine. I think I'm getting signs over here. I don't know what they mean. Peace is what they mean.
Keep rolling.
So this is the fight that we must have. We have to stop mining coal, we have to stop drilling for oil, we have to stop fracking for gas, we have to shut down the nuclear power plants, we have to stop subsidizing and promoting dirty energy. We have to get these employees' pension plans out of the oil game. We have to demand that our tax dollars, and I do mean demand, that our tax dollars be used for solar farms and windmills and mass transit and sane cities and tidal power and water preservation and organic farming that restores the soil. We have to mend our relationship with nature. We have to heal the metabolic rift, and we have no time to waste. But we have to do this not by fiat, but mindfully. We have to do it with justice. We have to make very, very generous provision for all the workers and all the communities who will be economically displaced by the transition from dirty extreme energy to clean renewable energy. We have to clean up the communities that have been poisoned by our dirty energy. In this country, it's overwhelmingly poor areas like Appalachia. It's overwhelmingly communities of color. We have to carry the idea of justice into the global sphere as well. Rich countries must pay for our past carbon and nuclear sins so that poor countries can weather climate change and develop their economies sustainably and with renewable energy. So there's been a lot of talk tonight about Occupy. Occupy was a tremendous thing, but I've actually heard it criticized because it didn't create a movement. But I'll tell you one thing, Occupy did an enormously important thing for us all. It named the enemy. It liberated the word capitalism from the shackles of the last few decades. Not Chevron or Monsanto or Obama or Bush, and it's not the military-industrial complex or corporatism. It's capitalism. MCM prime, grow or die. If we are to break free of this deadly cycle, we must begin to visualize another world, a sustainable world that's built on democracy and equality. A world not of more, but of enough. Enough food, enough water, shelter, time, joy, peace. The way ahead is very unclear, but we must set our foot on the path and make the road by walking.